Hi, this is Linda with Overbrook Quilt Connection, and we are doing block 6 of the Illusion Sampler. And we are starting by making half square triangles of background 1 and background 4. And this is the first time we've sewn two backgrounds together to have a contrast for, and we're using that contrast in the center of this block. Then we are going to make a bunch, those will be squared up to 2.5 inches. All right, then we're going to make a bunch of flying geese, and you guys have done that before in this, so the combinations are important though. So watch your book, watch your pattern, watch your instructions, because you will make 4 yellow, you'll start with 4 yellow rectangles, and you'll do a flying goose with each combination. So yellow and maroon, yellow and blue, yellow and orange, and yellow and this pale teal. You will also make 2 of each of the colors that you're using with the background number 1. So again, just watch your pattern and make sure that you have the color combinations right. So yeah, you'll be doing 2 of each of the colors with the background and 1 of each of the yellows with each of the 4 colors. I've probably really confused you. Then the flying geese are 2.5 by 4.5, which is the same size as your original rectangle. All right, then the next step you're going to do is you're going to sew them into quadrants. And so the combinations are sewing the yellow with the point towards the wide part of the color. So the point of the goose to the base of the goose. And you'll do that with each of the 4 color combinations. And you'll press it towards the fat part of the goose. Then you will sew you'll sew some background squares to the gray side of your half square triangle. And again, look at your pictures, follow that to make sure that you sew it to the right side, the correct side. And then you will sew that piece onto your goose. So let me orient that the same as this one, and you will be sewing it, wait, I just did it backwards. You'll be sewing it that way. So the white side to the yellow, okay? So then you will once you sew that, you're going to press that back towards the white part. And then you will sew a background square, 2.5 inch background square to one end of your flying geese. So then the combination for your square goes like, so you'll sew that whole strip together, and then you'll sew that to that, and sew that whole strip there. And you'll make 1 of each color combination. So you'll end up with 4 pieces, and those will end up making your making the pinwheel. We're going to end up with a gray pinwheel in the center. When we sew these together, they'll be sewn together like a 4 patch. So let me finish sewing this quadrant together, and then I'll show it to you again before I sew the 4 patch. So then you'll see what it's going to look like. I have this final quadrant made, and I want to note on something here. When you are sewing this strip here, make sure that you do not deviate from your 1/4 inch. In fact, if you need to go back and restitch it to get it a little deeper, because it needs to be, in order for that to be a straight line there, it needs to be a really good 1/4 inch. So here's all of the quadrants made. I'm going to sew them together just like a big 4 patch, and then I'll show you the finished block. The 12.5-inch block is complete. So I sewed it just like a 4-patch, nested all the seams, and then swirled the center so it opens up and you have a flat center that way. Now we're ready for the accent strips. And this time on the first accent strip, they went really easy on us. We're just doing 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles of background 3 and the colors. So I'm not going to show you how to piece those because all you're doing is sewing the long seam and then pressing it towards the color. And then they have you, put them back and forth. So you'll sew 4 of them together into one strip, and then you'll have your one single that like we always have. So that's your first accent strip. The second accent strip, we are appliquing triangles. And we'll be appliquing some onto white onto color and color onto white. Now, they give us in the pattern, there's just this colored picture. And I'm sorry, I've written myself so many notes on here, but they recommend that you not do turned edge applique on this, that you cut it to size. And the size is, it's 3 inches across the bottom, and it's 3 inches from the bottom to the tip. When I was in math class, I would have known what that kind of a triangle is, but I don't know anymore what that is. So instead of, you could trace that onto template plastic and do it. Instead of that, I ended up using my Trirex ruler, which I realize it doesn't have a point on it, but it was the right angles. And so I put myself a piece of tape because it was just a little bit below the 2.5 inch to make it the right width, to make it 3 inches across. And so they have you cut fusible. And so I did that, but instead of 3 3/4 like they did with the squares, I only cut mine 3 1/4. Because I didn't need it for the fusible part, and I didn't want my fusible to come off of my square. So I took my fusible and I used the bottom edge and put so this is before I fused it on, when it was just the fusible. And I put the bottom edge along where I had my tape, and I drew it up on both sides. And then I just took my ruler and just moved it up and finished drawing so they crossed each other. And so from here to here should be 3 inches. If I did it a little bit wonky, and I didn't worry about that because I could trim it when I'm trimming, cutting this out. So then I fused it on the back of my squares. Now, I did the windowing on this, which is cutting out the center so you don't have the fusible all over it. And I don't know if this shows up on the camera or not, but I did that on the white, and I would suggest not doing that on the white because, normally I would think about trimming behind it, but you can already see the fusible part there kind of showing through. And I was afraid if I trimmed off behind it would look even worse. So I just left it. So I did not trim behind it. And you can see the fusible, so I would suggest that on your white ones you don't do the window, that you just do it all, cover the whole back. It doesn't show through at all on the colors. So do those however you want. So then once you fuse it on, and then you trim it to size, which I will do now. And So to do that, I just, I made sure that my 3 inches, 1, 2, 3, I made sure 3 inches was right on that tip, and it is. And so then I just cut it. And then I just laid my ruler on my edges and cut them off. Now the reason they say not to do turned edge applique is because of these points. Because if you have seam allowance, whoops, that moved on me a little bit, so I'm gonna go back and recut that a little. But the reason they don't suggest turned edge applique is because then you have these seam allowances where you're trying to fold all that into these really sharp points, and that doesn't work very well. So, all right, I've got my fusible on. And I'm going to show you how I fused it onto the square. And it will go on a background square that I just had. Okay. Oh, trying to do this. I'm not smooth at this, as you can tell. So, to center it, for me, and the size of triangles that I did, it was about, in order to center it, it was about 5/8 of an inch from the edge to the tip on all the corners. So, as you can see, I'm 5/8 inch there. And I'm a little off there, so I'm going to move that up and go back and check this one, and it's still okay. And sorry, this is a big ruler. I didn't use this bigger ruler at home when I was doing it, so that's 5/8 inch also. So it's where I want it, and I'm just gonna, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, they don't have the triangle square on any of the, that sounds weird, having a triangle square. But they didn't, they centered it on the square, but they didn't have it lined up with the square. They made it really off, you know, the corners off. All right, so then we just applique around it. And they suggest a stitch in there. And I used a really pale gray that didn't really show on the white, but it did show when I went off of the white. So I don't know, you might want to use matching thread on that, just whatever you, or you could zigzag it, or you could, you know, you don't have to use a blanket stitch, but when you come to the corners, you need to, you know, your blanket stitch stitches along here and then bites over into the, and comes back, and you stitch a couple more stitches and it comes back. When you get to a corner, you want to make sure your needle's on the outside edge. All the way to the corner, and then when you turn it, then it'll bite over into the fabric right. It won't, and you know, I was more successful on some corners than others. So I'm gonna, do you want to do the one appliquing, or do you want me to just, what do you think?
Yeah, we could.
Okay, all right, then let me switch my
Never hurts to see something again.
That's true. It's the same as what we did with circles, but I guess we didn't have any corners on the circles.
Got the other side of you then.
Let me reset my machine. I did.
Never hurts to write down what you did.
That's
she
right.
Wrote down what she did.
That's right. Okay, we'll hope this works now that I'm on camera. We'll see. But you want your needle to come down right where the edge of the color is. And then I'll try and do this without having to get into me getting in too close. But when you're stitching on the white with the really pale gray, it's not as noticeable if you go off. And you don't go too fast because you want to be able to guide it in. Okay, so now I've gone, whoops, I just did what I said not to do because now it's going to not be right. So I'm gonna not let that stitch, and I'm gonna put it back down, and then I'm gonna turn it and let it go. Things never go on camera like you think they're going to. You know, when you're at home and you're just stitching away and there's no pressure, it's a lot easier.
We got amateur equipment anyway.
Okay, I'm gonna trim this off so it's gone when I get there. All right. Aren't you glad these are not very big triangles? We'd be at this all day.
I know she didn't start right in the corner either.
I did not start right in a corner. Okay, so then I'm going around the last edge. And, you know, sometimes on those really tight or point, you know, really sharp points, it kind of makes it hard. And I go about one stitch over where I started. And sometimes it doesn't show at all, and sometimes like that it shows that they're really close together because I overlapped. So, but you know what? I'm gonna leave it because once I back away from it, I'll never notice it again. We will be putting these all into one row. So let me see, they alternate. Oh, no, the purple one goes in the middle. They alternate with a color background and a light background. And it doesn't matter, you know, they're just very random how they're placed in the triangles themselves. So I'm going to sew the rest of this row together, and then I'll assemble the rest of the block, and I'll come back and show you the finished block. All right, here is block 6, all done. So as you can see, the triangles just kind of go every which way, and it doesn't really matter which way they go. And it, I think it turned into a really cute block. So good luck. We'll see you back for block 7.